I'm Wesley Hunt.
I'm Wrendon Hunt. And you're in the hunt.
Well, let's try this again.
Let's do this. Let's do this. So, first of all, you're looking good.
Don't feel the best. Don't feel the best. It's not COVID.
Yeah.
You know, there's other things.
There's
I've gotten
other
tested.
ailments.
There's other things that are out there. So I just don't feel the best at all. But we're here.
In the words of Deion Sanders, if you look good, you play good.
Yeah.
If you play good, they pay good.
I feel like he belongs in a pantheon with like Socrates and
Yogi Berra.
and Deion Sanders.
And Deion Sanders. So, one story I have to tell about our wonderful trip to Tampa Bay last weekend. Got to go see Tom Brady throw his 600th career touchdown pass.
Amazing
It's an amazing time.
Amazing
And
weekend.
one of the things that we talked about the previous week, we talked about us scheduling travel, and when we schedule travel together, how it becomes a very laissez-faire type of thing. Well, one of the things that we discussed was, as long as I have a cell phone and a credit card, I'm not concerned, right? So I wake up in the morning to go to the airport. Because I knew I wasn't going to work out the next day, I decided to take a really long run. So I get out, I'm running. It's very dark outside, daylight savings, which I can't stand. I don't know why we still do daylight savings. Another conversation for another day.
Right.
But I'm out running, and when you run in the dark, you get really keen to pay attention to things that are 10 to 15 feet away. Because if it's anything that's bigger than your hand and it's not moving, it could be any type of critter, right? I mean, I've run up on smaller alligators, possums, all sorts of stuff, and I try to stay away from those things. So I get closer and closer, and I see this thing that's probably the size of a small cat. So I'm running, and it's not moving. I start to get concerned at this point. Okay, this thing is not moving. I'm getting closer to it. And then I see that it is black with a thick white stripe down its back, because I have just run upon a skunk. So when I see how close I am to it...
So you ran up on your kinfolk.
No.
Dirty little
skunk. So
dirty, nasty skunk. He look at you and he say, "Hey, Wrendon, how are you?
Haven't seen you in the neighborhood in a while."
The family reunion this weekend.
If he's my kinfolk, guess who else's kinfolk he is?
It's not mine. It's not how that works.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Via the transitive property that I'm talking about, it's not
how that works.
It's not how that works.
Just you. So I get fairly close to this thing, realize that it's a skunk, and the grass is wet because it's early in the morning, and I pivot very quickly, and I slip on the grass. I'm trying to hold my cell phone up, but it gets caught in the wet grass, and as this is all happening, there's this spray that comes out, okay? I get up, I sprint away from this thing, and I smell my shirt.
And you're like, I put that on every day before I leave the house. That's my cologne.
Is this Tom Ford?
Eau de parfum.
Eau de parfum. Not an eau de toilette. Oui. So this is in the beginning of an 8-mile run. This is probably mile 1 in an 8-mile run. So I'm running for the rest of this, and I'm like smelling my shirt, and I'm like, this is horrible. What do I got to do? At this point, too, I have a very early flight, so I'm like, okay, if I get home, how many showers am I going to have to take? Very disturbed by this whole thing. This has never happened to me before. I get back home, take a couple showers. I believe that the smell has gone away, and we proceed. We meet up in Tampa Bay because we were on different flights, because you don't fly Southwest.
We're not talking about that.
We're not talking about that.
We're not going to do that.
We meet up in Tampa Bay, and
move on.
Yeah, move on. We get ourselves situated and everything, and I'm in the hotel. We're in the hotel room, and I go to the bathroom before you and I were going to go out and grab some food, and I leave the bathroom, and this is before I've told you this whole story, and you're like, "Hey, man, I'm kind of concerned. I have a question to ask you." Like, what are you concerned about? Why do you have a question to ask me? Man, have you been smoking weed? And I'm like,
No.
No. Like, would I just go in the bathroom and smoke weed and walk out? That's a really weird question to ask me.
See, it smelled skunky. It's
Why,
reasonable.
why would you ask me that?
Totally reasonable.
And I told you the story, and then I'm trying to figure out, well, what does that smell? Come to see, it was my necklace. Because I had taken everything off and all that, and my necklace had this weird, skunky smell. And in the process of this, with my phone
You started smelling everything.
I just started smelling.
You just started smelling everything.
And in the process of this, when I slipped, my phone got water in the charging port, which then my charging port stopped working. So story full circle, all of a sudden I'm calling you and I'm thinking, okay, all I needed was a cell phone and a credit card, and I don't have a cell phone anymore because I can't charge it. Ended up getting that situation taken care of, but it was a rough start to what ended up being
amazing
a glorious weekend. It was a fantastic weekend.
Yes, our host was absolutely gracious.
Yes.
Best time at a game I've ever had.
Yes.
And I will forever be indebted for a fantastically amazing experience.
Absolutely. And speaking of sports, there's something that I don't know if you've been following this or not, Wesley. And every now and then our listener sees us do this. Sometimes we like to read things to catch the other one off guard if they haven't been following it. So here's something I wanted to bring to your attention. It's sports related. So the NAACP.
I don't know. I have not heard this yet. So I'm concerned.
So glad you haven't heard this.
I have not heard the story
So glad
yet.
you haven't heard this.
Okay.
The NAACP, which, oh, by the way, before I even read this, of all of the organizations
Colored people.
possibly in the world, the NAACP has fallen from grace worse than all of them, right?
Yes.
They are the Roman Empire of progressive organizations.
But it still stands for colored people,
For
correct?
colored people,
That's
right?
actually that's what the CP and the NAACP stands for.
Yes.
Now, I get it. At the time, that was acceptable. But, I mean, if we're talking about the Washington football team,
Times have changed.
and you're still referring to this organization as blah, blah, blah.
National Association of Advancement for Colored People. Like, guys, we need to get up to speed. And not only that would I say that, but it's also this idea of this is an organization that in the 50s and 60s did a tremendous amount for black people in America, a tremendous amount. And over kind of the 90s and on,
Victim mentality, man.
all they've gone back to is the victim
mentality, man.
What a fall from grace for an organization that has done so much to improve the livelihood and lifestyle of blacks
Probably
in
wouldn't be sitting here
America.
without him, actually.
No.
And they never got Martin Luther King's dream, and that is we're actually kind of figured it out in this country.
Yes. And how can we think about progressing and upholding rather
it,
than
not
always being victims?
This is why we're here.
All that to say, so the NAACP calls on athletes not to sign with Texas teams due to recent legislation.
Oh, wait, are you kidding me?
No, I'm dead serious.
No, you're serious.
I'm dead serious.
When did this come out?
So this came out yesterday. The NAACP sent a letter to the Players Association in 5 professional sports Thursday asking players to reconsider signing with teams in Texas because of recent laws passed. The 2-page letter signed by NAACP President and CEO Derek Johnson that was sent to the MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, and WNBA Players Associations points to the organization's recent laws, the state's recent laws on abortion, voting rights, and mask mandates.
What does that have to do?
And I quote from what they said: over the past few months, legislatures in Texas have passed archaic policies disguised as laws that directly violate privacy rights and a woman's freedom to choose, restrict access to free and fair elections for black and brown voters, and increase the risk of contracting the coronavirus. So this is the letter that the NAACP has sent to teams such as the Houston Astros, Texas Rangers, the Houston Rockets, the Dallas Mavericks, the San Antonio Spurs.
That I don't even know where to begin.
I have a place to begin for you.
I don't even know where to start.
I have a place to begin. How about the NAACP?
Have a Coke and a smile. In fact, if I didn't have an army, I would shut.
like, how about the NAACP spend their time, effort, and bandwidth focusing on things that are actually going to help progress black people in America, rather than spending their time on uber political attacks to professional sports teams?
Do you have any idea how many millionaires professional sports meant every single year? So if you really, black millionaires. So if you're really trying to help out black people, and here's an avenue that literally gets people generational wealth with the snap of a finger within one day, and you want to remove that from the black community, and then you want to sit around and tell me that you're pro colored people, that's ridiculous. So this stuff falls on its head.
Yeah, and let's talk about even the reasons why they have cited. Okay, and we can go through them one by one. First would be the mask mandate, that we are putting people unnecessarily at risk by a mask mandate. Let me tell you what. Walk around Houston. There's a lot of black people in black communities who have decided that they don't want to wear masks either. So this idea that it's a black thing, that we think that the vaccinations work and don't, that's a ridiculous idea.
Wrendon, I don't have a mask anymore. I haven't worn a mask in Houston in months. The only time I've worn a mask is on the airplane.
Well,
to put that in perspective, you want to talk about draconian. You have people that are still trying to do mask mandates, and we have not worn masks for months.
Well, in the words of Joe Jaquan Biden, must mean you're not black. You like that, Jaquan? Everybody in the club getting tipsy. Everybody. Hey man, if you're not wearing a mask and you don't believe that has something to do, then you ain't black.
Did you see Al Green?
No.
Al Green had a Zoom call in his office in Washington on TV a couple of days ago. He had a mask on.
Well,
I don't mean to,
Wesley,
I don't mean to speak ill of my potential future colleague. I looked at that.
Wesley, let me tell you something.
In his office, in front of his computer, by himself.
So,
with a mask on.
To be fair, Wesley, this is a security briefing that you haven't gotten yet. He's protecting himself from the Zappa variant. See, the Zappa variant can go through the airwaves and the computer and Zoom and Skype. Oh. And so you have to wear a mask so that you can get through the Zappa.
That's what the Zulu variant is going to be, but it's really the Zappa.
It's the Zappa variant. So that's the first thing.
Anyway,
is
go ahead.
The mask mandate piece, right? And then the second piece is the idea of pro-life legislation. This is not a conversation about pro-choice versus pro-life. But what I do want to highlight for the black community, which is something that I think is not being talked enough about, because quite frankly, I mean, my views on the subject cannot just be put into one bucket, and that's another conversation for another day, okay? But given that, if you look at the viability of a group of people or of a species, right now in the United States, our birth rate per couple is about 1.7 children per couple. Mm-hmm. What that tells us is that generation over generation, we don't have a replacement birth rate.
Yeah.
Okay. Which means that we need more people, and one of the ways you do that is through immigration. But when you think about,
so this is what the Democrats are trying. This is the justification.
So
what they're saying is,
but when you think about this, Wesley, when you think about we need more people, and how do we actually get to more people? If you look at where we are, we're going to have to pay money for the next generation's Social Security and the next generation's Medicare and all these types of things, right? Medicaid. Like these are the things that we're going to have to do. So if we're not in the Zappa variant, if we're not able to, as a society, reproduce in a way that's going to make our engines run better, we're in trouble. Okay, so I was thinking about that. And every Western country, by the way, is below replacement value for the amount of children that they're having. Yeah. Something to think about. Yeah. Thinking about that fact, you know what I started thinking about? And this pertains to the broader views of abortion in this country. what I started thinking about is, what about the replacement value for black people? Mm-hmm. Everybody who's talking about Black Lives Matter, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. Okay, we were the only demographic in the last decade in the city of New York City, the most populous city in this country. There were more black babies aborted than born.
It's tragic
in New York over the past decade.
I know.
And it's only for blacks. It's not for Hispanics.
Not for any other demographic.
It's not for whites. It's not for any other demographic.
Amen, Wrendon.
So we as a collective NAACP are coming out and saying, look, this is a practice that is disproportionately affecting black people and the viability of us being able to grow our own kind.
Very good.
And once again, this is not a conversation about pro-life, pro-choice. Like, that's not even the conversation I'm having. I'm having the conversation of how can you sit there and say how much Black Lives Matter and how much you care about black people, and then wholly support a policy that makes sure that there's not going to be more black people in this country. It's inconsistent. It's inconsistent.
My man.
And so for the NAACP to do that and say that, that's their second thing, is they're basically saying, hey, and once again, the NAACP wasn't always like this. Jesse Jackson didn't start becoming pro-choice until he ran for president in 1982. Because before that, he and everybody else in the black community was like, oh my gosh, guys, we can't do this. And once again, this is not about being pro-choice or pro-life. It's about how we think about the policies that we have, how they affect our community. And as a black person who has two very beautiful black children and has 13% of this population, I need some answers as to how this is disproportionately affecting my community and the growth rate that's inherent in my community. Because in 2, 3, 4, 5 generations, the problem I have is there's going to be less of us. And I think that we have a very pronounced and significant and important role in culture, and I don't want to see that anymore. So that's the second thing that I'll say.
So what y'all did know is that at the end of this show, Wrendon's going to announce his candidacy for United States Congress.
Get out of here, man. Get out of here, man. And there's that piece for the NAACP, and then we have the third piece of it too, voter laws. And we've talked about this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Prove to me why timelines on when people can vote, restricted voting.
Wrendon,
show me how this is race related.
Requiring an ID, no more ballot harvesting, no more 24-hour voting. I need somebody to explain to me, like I'm a child.
You can even tell me that makes you a jerk for making this more onerous, and I'd be like, okay. But that's not racist.
That's not racist.
That's not the place for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People to step in.
You're making it more difficult to vote
for everybody,
not just for. But then the argument is well, it disproportionately impacts those people that don't have fill in the blank, don't have ID, don't have.
Wesley, show me the numbers,
Wrendon.
Because when I say that abortion disproportionately affects the birth rate of black children,
that is statistically,
I can show you those numbers.
That is statistically accurate.
Show me the numbers of how me saying that you have to vote earlier or later disproportionately affects somebody who's black.
Show it to me. But see, we know better than that.
Show me the money. I love black people.
We know. Hey, come on. Congratulations, Jerry. You're still my agent.
Show me the money. Show me the money.
Yeah.
So that I thought that you would appreciate what's happening with the NAACP and their broad overreach to mandate that people don't come to Texas teams
because of politics.
Yeah. You know what it's like? It's kind of like Major League Baseball.
Oh. How about them Braves?
How about them Braves?
Obviously, we're rooting for the Astros.
Hey.
But how about them? How about them Braves?
How silly must they feel right now? Because you know what the city of Atlanta is seeing right now? Man, we'd had an all-star game. Look at all this economic viability that we could look at all these black-owned business that would have gotten all the benefit.
Even more. We've had an all-star game there.
But
oh wow, we could double up on this.
We moved the all-star game from a place with one set of voting rights to a place that has a worse set of voting rights.
It's a nightmare for MLB. It's a nightmare.
But once again, this goes back to my favorite word. Consistency.
Yeah.
Let's be consistent and have well thought out conversations on these things and what it means. Just because I'm black doesn't mean that I have to support all of those three things that the NAACP, who is my self-proclaimed leader, puts out there.
All right.
I don't have to be in that situation.
You got any more, man? You got more that bag of tricks?
I might have
you silly rabbit.
I might have a little bit more. I do have a little bit more.
You got some more tuning in that trombone, man? Dang.
I do.
Jeez.
You know what else I want to talk about?
All right.
I want to talk about the State Department.
Okay.
The State Department now has put out new passports.
I saw this.
That will allow people to not designate what their gender is.
Put an X
on a passport.
On a passport.
On a document that's meant to identify people. It's allowing you to omit a pretty important identifying factor of a person.
So Dan Crenshaw had the best tweet ever, by the way, when this came down. He put a picture of the new legislation that allows you to put an X down for your gender. And he goes, whew, but paraphrasing, he goes, whew, man, I sure bet those 300 Americans that are still in Afghanistan really care about this.
So that's exactly where I was going with this.
Think about that.
So,
I mean, all the things that we're dealing with, all the things that we're talking about, and this is zero priority.
So the State Department and the Biden administration has put out that we're doing this because we want to make sure that we're fighting any type of gender inequality. Okay? I bet women in Afghanistan would have been happy if the administration had the same stance and the State Department had the same stance when we decided to abandon them.
Amen.
This is the same State Department.
Amen.
Same State Department. And once again, we get trapped in this having to be woke all of the time, which of course brings me to Dave Chappelle, who...
It's one of the greatest comedy hours I've ever seen in my life. I've watched it now 3 times.
I've only watched it twice, and I need to watch it again.
I've watched it 3 times. It is absolutely incredible. But this is a generational thing, too.
This is a call out that Dave Chappelle has made, and it's very similar to the call out that I make on abortion in the black community and how we think about that. It's something that we need to think about. I'm not telling anybody how to think. It's something that we need to think about, and we need to really understand who we're hitching our wagons to. And this is the same thing that I've always said about organized labor.
Yeah.
You've always heard me say this about organized labor. Somehow, organized labor has hitched themselves to the Democratic Party with black people when organized labor basically started so that they can keep black people from getting jobs. Mm-hmm. Hey, we don't have any union members who are colored in our union, so we're going to protect the jobs of a certain group of people, and we're not going to protect the jobs of another group of people. Yeah. And we're going to leave those people. But somehow over time, we've been manipulated and absorbed into a political ideology that doesn't even suit us well. In the same way that we've been manipulated and absorbed into a political ideology that prevents the growth of our own people in a population.
If anybody's listening to this, this is really amazing. By the way, Wrendon, this is very, very good and very in-depth.
Well, thank you.
If anybody's listening to this, you really got to rewind it and play that back, okay? Because you are somebody who has educated yourself and understands the ebb and flow of history. And we have people right now that are in charge that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. We have educated people that call themselves a certain political party or ideology that refuse to acknowledge history. And what you've done, ranging from abortion to labor, is literally walk us through the idea that knowledge is power, not a Twitter feed, not an Instagram post, not a Facebook rant that as we talk. Yeah, I got a rant about this. No. None of that. Pick up a book and learn history.
Yes. You know, we talked the other day about. I was telling you that I had read a biography.
Real quick, how many black people know that colored people is still in the name of the NAACP? How many people do you think?
I hope not enough, because I'd hope that we would, the same way we march and go to all sorts of different things,
that's a bingo.
We would step up and say
that's a bingo.
Let's stop doing this, guys.
That's my point. People don't even know, Wrendon.
Yeah. And then on the other end of that, you have this whole idea of, once again, it's an argument of consistency. Well, we keep the colored people piece in the name to remind us of where we've come from.
Okay.
Well, then why are you weirded out when somebody wants to keep barracks called
Robert E. Lee?
Robert E. Lee. Like, you understand the concept, right? Like, we want to remember this is part of our history.
You want to remember it.
So just consistency. If we're going to keep that, and I say that on both sides, just
be consistent.
Consistency. And once again, not the Wrendon Hunt attack on the left side of things. Because you've heard me say this all the time with people who are ardently pro-life. It's like, hey guys, if you're ardently pro-life, what are you doing to help and provide resources for these people that are having kids?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Not a Facebook post, not like, hey, I'm for this candidate. Like, what are you doing to make sure that 17-year-old that gets pregnant has some resources so that they can raise? Like, what are you doing to make sure that we're in a position as a culture where somebody who is in a position where they don't think that they have options, you provide them with more options. Not just talk about it, be about it.
But this is the world we live in, right? I changed my Facebook page picture black, so that means I like black people. I'm with you. What have you done? You don't even have any black friends. Like, you can't even weed, right? Like, but you virtue signal, but have done nothing. And what I want people to do is to think about, what are you going to do? Like, we're sitting here doing this right now because we got sick of talking about it.
Yeah.
So we started a podcast, and I ran for office as a Republican black person. These are my stances, these are my beliefs, and I'm not going to sit around the sideline and not get decisively engaged and then continue to bitch and want to complain about it. Because if you don't get decisively engaged, then you don't get to complain about it. This is why I love Twitter trolls and Facebook trolls. Because, like, the people that talk trash about you, I laugh all the time. Because I'm like, so what are you doing?
Yeah.
One of my St. John's classmates, I'm not going to mention his name, it's a dirtbag. He's done nothing in his life. Decides to troll me, and I know what he's doing. I'm like, dude, are you serious? You're not even doing anything to help your liberal causes. You're just talking. You're just trolling. It's worthless.
Yeah. It's cowardice. It's hiding behind an avatar and not engaging in life.
And not actually doing something about it.
Figuring out how to do things. And back to the point on Dave Chappelle, this guy is literally refusing to be canceled right now.
And he won't be either.
He's refusing to be canceled. And what's happening...
He's awesome.
Dave Chappelle is shining light on something that I don't think people have spent enough time thinking about and talking about. What he's shining light on is, in our woke cinematic universe, we have put ourselves in a position where there are hierarchies of minorities or hierarchies of people who have been oppressed in some way, shape, or form. Okay? There's hierarchies of that. And it's still, in many ways and shapes and forms, and Dave Chappelle has said this many times in his comedy, it's still okay for people to demean or undermine a black person, but if you demean or undermine a gay person or a trans, then all of a sudden that's not okay, and that's the line that we draw. Yeah. How many things have been on Netflix over the last 10 years that demean or undermine black people?
Right.
This is the point that he's making. Not to say that it's right or wrong, but it's something we should be thinking about.
It's not consistent.
It's highly inconsistent. Yeah. And so now Dave Chappelle has come up and he has said on his Instagram, he's saying, look, everybody who is in that type of, everybody who's in this group, trans people, they've all been nothing but kind to me. And I get that. And now the message is out that I all of a sudden am not willing to hear what other people are saying. He's like, that's not true.
It's not true.
I'm willing to hear what you say. And I see myself in a very similar situation. Anybody who knows me knows that I don't have a problem with much of anybody. I just want to know why you think what you think, and I'd love to have an educated conversation about it. But don't try to make me the bad guy for the sake of having contention in a war in a us versus them.
Totally fair.
I'm not going to be your bad guy for that.
So we'll end on consistency. That's the word for the day. That's the word of the day. Is consistent.
Consistent.
B-E.
Consistent.
And I want to give a shout out to our St. John's Mavericks versus Kincaid tonight. Go Mavs. Go win.
And
go Stros.
Go Stros.
Take us out.
And remember, smiles are contagious, so make someone's day. God bless.